Hey guys, AscendantGod here with Raid Shadow Legends. Going to be doing a guide on auto-friendly Ultra Nightmare clan boss compositions. So I'm going to be covering how to build an auto-friendly composition with your own champion roster, then show you a bit of an example of my own personally. Now, some of you may be asking at this point, why would I care to make a composition that can do the boss on auto? Trust me, after you've been playing for months and months and you're working on things like your arena composition, stage 20 dungeons, to get the fastest clears possible, building your faction wars teams, things like that, you're gonna find yourself spending a lot of time playing this game, re-gearing champions, putting masteries on them, farming for potions, things like that. So the more that you can tend to automate like this, the better. If you aren't there yet, I can assure you, you will eventually get to the point where you'll want to be able to just put your clan boss encounter on auto, walk away, and come back to your team having done their job to get your loot. So this guide is for Ultra Nightmare exclusively. Different bosses have the option to run either a speed composition, counterattack composition, or a hybrid of both. On Ultra Nightmare, the boss speed is too fast for a speed composition to be viable, with very few exceptions. We're not going to touch on those today. So as such, for the most part, you want your composition for Ultra Nightmare to be a counterattack group. The reason I'm focusing on this is because I know a lot of you that are farming Brutal or Nightmare do have speed compositions. You need to prepare to leave that composition if you want to be able to farm Ultra Nightmare with a reasonable amount of keys. Ideally, you want to have to do it within a maximum of 4 keys, since you typically get 4 keys per day. All right, and I want to cover Ultra Nightmare because eventually this is what you're going to be aiming for, and it might require you to completely overhaul your current clan boss roster or the masteries, gear, things like that. All right, and I wanted to let you know right now so you can start planning accordingly. Now, some of you may not have a counterattack champion yet. If you don't, then you might have to wait on farming the Ultra Nightmare clan boss until you do. I know it's frustrating, but it's just the way that it is currently. Counterattack gives you a huge advantage on the boss, as every time he does his AoE attacks, it gives you, which is 2 out of 3 of his attacks, it's, the counterattacks happen on every single champion of yours, so that's an increase of about 66% more overall attacks than if you didn't have the counterattack set up. So without counterattack, there's no other way to compensate for that loss of those attacks. All right, now to start, you want to set up all the speeds so that the auto casting of your champions will rotate the way that you want it to throughout the entire fight. With that said, the first thing you need to consider when choosing your champion roster is if their skills have a cooldown period that'll work with the boss. For example, my Martyr is my counterattack champion, so I'm going to show you her. And of course, since she's my counterattack champion, I want her to be the slowest out of my group because I want everybody else going before her. Then she does her counterattack right before the boss does the AoEs, and then everybody gets 2 turns of counterattack for the AoEs, excluding my Turvold, but he's an exception to the rule. I'll touch on him in just a little bit. But that's the main concept, is you want your counterattack champion going last. Okay, so with that said, like I said, Martyr here is my counterattack champion. She has her counterattack here, Bastion of Faith, 60% increased defense, counterattack on all allies for 2 turns. All right, now the thing is the boss's rotation is 3 different turns: 2 AoE attacks, 1 stun, rinse and repeat. So when it comes to the counterattacks, you want a counterattack champion that does the counterattack every 3 turns. So you need a 3-turn cooldown. You see hers right here after you level her up, or max out her skill, I should say. It's a 3-turn cooldown. So that coincides with the boss doing his AoE attacks. So since her counterattack does have 3 turns for its cooldown, I'm good here. She's going to do this rotation right. All right. Conversely, if I were to use, say, Miscreated Monster here, I would use him on the boss for damage mitigation. However, his ally protection, which is the main thing that he would do the damage mitigation for his allies, is on a 4-turn cooldown even at max skills. At 4 turns, this is not going to stay in sync with the boss's AoE attacks, and as such, he isn't an option for my clan boss roster. He's amazing in most other encounters in the game, just not on the clan boss. All right. So you'll have to pay attention to who is casting what when in your rotation. Say, for example, if you have a champion like Bad Alcazar that can remove debuffs, all right, which he's great for removing the stuns. He has this A2 here, Malice, where it removes all debuffs from all allies, which includes the stun. He'll remove it. All right, and it's on 3 turns. So again, as long as he's doing this in sync with the timing it right after you've been stunned, you're good. All right. So the great thing about it, though, is that it'll remove the stuns, but you want him going first in your rotation as far as your speeds. That way, no matter who gets stunned, you're going to be able to remove the stun before they lose their turn. Okay, now my Bad Alcazar doesn't go first in my rotation, but he goes before any of my champions that do get stunned ever, even with affinity changes, do go, so I'm fine. Turbold's turns end up all over the rotation throughout the fight since he gives himself a speed boost a lot of the time. But there's nothing I can really do about that until I replace him. But Bad Alcazar's speed is fairly high in my composition. There's only a small window there where Turbold can get stunned before Bad Alcazar goes, so it doesn't happen very often. That's what you want. Now, to touch on that as far as the stun and who the boss targets, I'm not going to get into that too much. I mean, when the boss is still in Void Affinity, he typically targets your leader, which is why you put whoever you want getting stunned in your lead. All right. However, if your leader has a buff that others don't, say like, increased defense on them at that point, the boss will instead target a champion that doesn't have that increased defense or whatever buff it is that your main leader has. So that'll happen sometimes too. And when the boss does change to a certain affinity, they'll tend to target a champion of yours that has an affinity that they're strong against. Okay, now there are a lot of exceptions to those 2 rules, like if one of your champions has low hit points at the time of the stun, the boss will go after them. So my point here is that you can't be confident in exactly who the boss is going to stun. So as such, you should have your stun remover, like say Bad Alcazar or whoever else it is, should be the fastest in going first. So then you know that they're going to be going before the champion that gets stunned. All right. Now, once you figure out who you want in the roster and adjusting the speeds to have them go in the right turn order like that, you have to make sure you aren't doing anything to mess with the turn order once you put it on auto. All right. What that means is that you need to pay attention to what masteries you give your champions. There's a lot of them in the support tree that will mess up your turn order. All right. And let me show you an example here. Okay, so for example, Arcane Celerity here. All right, it makes it so that when your champion's debuffs fall off the boss, they have a 30% chance to increase the turn meter by 10%. Now, on most encounters in the game, this is a great ability. It essentially means that a better chance at getting more turns before the enemies do. However, on Ultra Nightmare Clan Boss, this one is not beneficial. The thing is that you would need to trigger a lot of these Arcane Celerities in order to eventually get an extra turn. And even at best, if you have a ton of debuffs, like say Dracomorph would be mine, he has tons of poisons. But even with him, he might get at best a few extra attacks on the boss overall throughout the encounter. It's not worth doing that to mess up your rotation. All right, now there are a lot of other things that do the same thing, like say Rapid Response on the same tier here. It does it when a buff falls off of one of your allies. So, there are also some in the defense tree too, like Cycle of Revenge here. All right, Cycle of Revenge is great for Arena if you're running a resist or defense team, but on the boss, this can again mess up your rotation. I'm not sure if the boss does critical damage with a critical hit. I'm not sure, but so I can't confirm that. But anything that does mess with turn meters that might happen on the boss, you need to avoid them because it just can mess up that rotation for you. All right. And now there's some, so you got some in support tree, some in defense tree, and but yeah, it doesn't make sense to mess yourself up here with your rotation, and yeah, it's just something you have to keep an eye on. Another thing to be careful of in the mastery tree that can throw off your rotation is Cycle of Magic. All right, it has a 5% chance of decreasing the cooldown of a random skill by 1 turn at the start of every turn. Now, with my Dracomorph here. With Dracomorph, that's great because I want him doing his poisons here as frequently as possible. So on Dracomorph, I absolutely chose that Cycle of Magic there, all right? However, with Bad Alcazar, again, remember he has that ability to remove that stun. If he has Cycle of Magic trigger and it causes this to happen 1 turn early, he will do this as soon as it's up, which means it could completely throw off the rotation so that he's not removing the stun on an ally You do not want that happening, because that's the whole point of having Bad Alcazar. He doesn't do much poisons. He does healing, which is great too, but more than anything, you want him removing that stun from your ally. All right, and the healing is great with him too, but you just don't want to mess up that rotation there and have him do the A2 at the wrong time. So ultimately, when it comes to the masteries, you want to pay attention, make sure you're not picking anything that is going to throw off the rotation on any of your champions, that you want casting specific skills at specific times. So again, you have to take it into consideration. Again, with Dracomorph, sure, go for a Cycle of Magic. You don't want the turn meter boost though, because getting his poison sooner by reducing the cooldown is great. Messing up his turn order is not, and that can mess up your whole rotation. All right, now I'm not going to get into the specific masteries here that are optimal for each champion on Clan Boss. I already have another video about that on my channel, so if you don't know what masteries to pick yet, take a look at my Clan Boss Masteries Guide. This video is focusing exclusively on making an auto-friendly composition for the Clan Boss. I'm not covering what artifacts, I'm not covering the stats, not covering the masteries and the like to pick. The new content here is to make the composition auto-friendly and touching on the things that you need to know specifically for that purpose. All right, now the last thing here is testing out your composition. What you need to do is you need to head into the Clan Boss encounter, turn on and off auto as manually as the encounter goes along, and make sure your champions are doing their rotations correctly and keeping track of who's doing what when. What you might find is that a champion tries to use the wrong skill initially in the start of the fight. So sometimes what you'll need to do is manually do the first couple of turns for your champions until you have the cooldowns set up the way that you want to, so you can turn it on auto, and now you know all the skills are going to go in the right order. All right, for example, with my rotation, if I want to maximize the damage from my, where is he here? Why am I not seeing him? Oh, how did I miss him? Here's Turvold. All right, so if I want Turvold to function optimally and get the most out of my keys, I want to use his first attack manually. He'll try to use his A2 and then his A3 initially, but I don't want him to, because his A3 scales based off of the number of debuffs on him, plus it scales if defense down and weaken is on the boss. So I want to get his weaken up on the boss as quickly as possible. I want to give my martyr a chance to put defense down on the boss, so that when he hits with his A3, it's going to hit that much harder. All right, so you have to pay attention to those kind of things too. Sadly, Polarium is horrible with messing up the champions on the Clan Boss. You would think that since tons of champions are viable for the dungeons and very few are viable for the Clan Boss, that they would prioritize the AI for the Clan Boss, but no. Recently, they messed up Nethril, Rosin Scarhide, and Dracomorph on the Clan Boss. All three of those champions that I have. All right, Dracomorph used to use his A3 and put his defense down and weaken on the boss whenever either of them would fall off of the boss. And now he only does it if both of those debuffs have fallen off the boss. It was a horrible idea, and it actually decreases your damage. With Nethril, he was already bad enough on the boss as it is. The only thing you want him using on the boss is your A1 for your poisons, and since it's 3 attacks, it works great with Giant Slayer. He used to use his A2 on the boss as well, which none of these work on the boss. You can't stun the boss, you can't slow the boss. Now he uses the A2 and the A3 along with the A1 on auto. So they completely messed him up even worse now. And they did the same thing with Rosin Scarhide, where now Rosin uses his A3 when he didn't used to. So there are certain champions like them where you only want them using specific abilities, and it's very unlikely that's going to happen on auto. The only ways you can know for sure, though, is to test it yourself. You can't rely on the information you find online or in videos, because the video may have been done prior to Polarium modifying something specifically with that champion. So as such, your best bet is to go through the fight yourself to see how it works. Because say if you're watching an older video, people will say, oh Nethril is pretty auto-friendly because he uses his A1 most of the time. He'll use his A3 when it's up, but mostly use the A1. Now he uses all three, so he is not auto-friendly at all anymore. It completely messed him up. And if you're going to use him on auto, now sadly, you're better off actually using War Master rather than Giant Slayer. So you got to consider, is it worth the extra time, and how much damage are you going to lose? Because you're going to lose a lot of poisons if you have him on auto now. So again, that's why you have to cover what they do in their rotations and what they do on the Clan Boss, because again, the artificial intelligence in the game is not very intelligent, and it will mess up your rotation if you don't pay attention. All right, so We covered all the main aspects of building an auto-friendly composition. You know what to look for, what not to look for. As far as the composition itself, again, that's things that I've covered in prior videos. So if you want to see how to build the compositions and what should be in your composition, that is in other prior videos. So I'm assuming you already watched those other videos, or if you haven't watched them already, because this is building off of that information to see, like, okay, you know what kind of champions you want in your composition, you know who should be going when, you know what speeds you need, you know everything else about it as far as the artifacts and all that as well. Now you want to see how to make a composition that'll be auto-friendly and adjust them accordingly to make that happen. All right, so since you already got all the main basis of what to do, I'm going to show you the sample real quick of my own auto-friendly composition here. All right, so got an Ultra Nightmare, got my roster here. Now I have all 10 in the lead because I want all 10 being the one to get stunned. The main thing he brings to the fight, he brings a decent amount of damage, but mainly I have him bringing attack down on the boss. Even with the stuns, he keeps attack down on the boss pretty well, and I have Martyr as a backup. So let's go into this fight, and I'm going to show you a few things here. And bear with me if you guys are like, why does his voice sound so weird? I'm fighting a cold right now. I actually lost my voice earlier today. Okay, so I'm going to start this out on auto. So Dracomorph here, yes, defense down and weaken is great to have on the boss, but initially on auto, Dracomorph will use his poisons. I want him doing that because 4 poisons are 200,000 damage. There's no way that by getting weaken and defense down, I mean, if I didn't have anybody else that could do weaken and defense down, might be a different story, but even then I'm pretty sure that 200,000 damage, which is what those 4 poisons put on the boss for that first turn, is going to be more damage than you would get from getting weaken and defense down on the boss. All right, now that would be kind of iffy again if you don't have weaken and defense down from other champions. I do though, so I want him doing the poisons, so auto on him with the poisons. There you go, and that's fine. Another good thing, Bad Alcazar initially will do basically the A2, which is his stun removal. I want him doing that because this part of the rotation is when I would want to be removing stuns, so he's right on key 2. Now with Turvold here, like I said, he'll do his A2 and his A3 if I let him do this on auto. I want to show you how to optimize damage here. So what I do on this, if I want to maximize my damage for this specific key, is I'm going to use his A2 and then use his A1. Because again, like, he has 5 buffs, so he would hit fairly hard with his A3 here, but he's going to be getting counterattack and increased defense on his next turn anyway. And you see the boss does not have weaken and he doesn't have defense down up yet. That's going to increase his A3's damage substantially. So I want to do his A1 first because I also want to try to get that weaken up as quick as I can. And there's a good chance he'll cast it. Look, now I have weaken up there. Great. All right, all 10, the first thing that he'll do is his A2 here, which gives me increased defense. I don't really need it because I have Martyr that gives me increased defense, but it'll give you an increased defense, and it'll put the and it'll hit harder than the A1 would. Now, I'm fine with him doing that because I don't need attack down yet, which is the main thing that he brings from his A1. Right now, the boss isn't going to hit hard anyway, so by all means, go ahead and, you know, forego the attack down right now. All right, so let him do the A2, and then we're going to go ahead and now see, again, Martyr, the first attack she's going to do is going to be, again, her counterattack with the increased defense, and that's exactly what I want because the boss is just about to do his 2 attacks. All right, so I got everybody. Since she went last, I'm good to go as far as, you know, basically everybody having counterattack for 2 full turns. That's why you want the counterattack champion to go last, so that everybody has their counterattack for 2 turns. Now I'm going to let this go on auto for a little bit. Now I will show you another issue here with this specific composition. With Martyr, one thing that is really frustrating is on auto, it doesn't matter if attack down is already on the boss, and if defense down isn't. Defense down could not be on the boss and the attack down could be up on the boss here, yet on auto she will still use her A3, which does attack down, instead of her A1, which does decrease defense. Again, this is where they completely messed up the AI on the clan boss with the rotation. It's just the way she works. But I mean, fortunately right now I do have 2 turns on defense down, so it's okay if she uses her A3. But in my experience, it doesn't even seem like the A3 hits harder than the A1. So as far as if you're doing this manually, my suggestion is to always do the A1 to try to keep the defense down up on the boss as much as possible. You don't want to lose defense down. Defense down is the largest damage increaser. Weaken does increase damage as well, but defense down increases it more than weaken does. See, she just used her A3 on the boss there. And sometimes what you're going to need to learn as far as who's doing what when is what the animations look like. Because like with the animation for her A1, she runs up to the boss and swings the sword. With her A3, she throws, I guess, the sword or what, I don't know what the heck she throws at the boss, but she throws something at the boss. So sometimes you got to get used to what animations they do to realize what they're doing when. All right. And I don't know if you're going to get a chance. I'm going to do the auto here for a while. Now, some other issues with this specific composition is Altan, later on when the damage gets brutal, he will always use his, well, from what I've seen, he always ends up using his A2 before his A1. Even if the attack down is about to fall off the boss, he'll still use his A2. At the end of the game, that means a wipe. So you got to be really careful of that as well. So you don't want Altan to let the attack down fall off the boss. So no matter what kind of composition you make, even if they're auto-friendly like mine is, it's still not going to be as good as if you were paying attention to the fight yourself. Because sometimes things will go wrong and you'll be like, man, normally I do like 25, 26 million per key, but on this encounter they only did, 18 million. What the heck went wrong? What most likely went wrong is, say your Altan or Tyrell or whoever you have for attack down, most likely they let attack down fall off the boss and you died prematurely because you lost attack down. That attack down just mitigates damage so much from the boss. It's vital. All right. But you can see now the rotation is going well here. My Martyr, since she always has that counterattack on a 3-turn cooldown, is always going to cast the counterattack right before the boss has the 2 turns for the AoEs. Turbold's turns go completely out of order because he gives himself that speed boost, like I said. So I don't really have any control over him. But one thing you're noticing on here too, though, is that Bad El, because of the affinity, Bad El Khazar is the one that's getting stunned. There's nothing I can do about that on this particular roster. He's going to be getting stunned. There's nothing I can do about that because he's the stun removal. But that's okay. I mean, that's just this one particular affinity. So you're only getting to see what happens here with this specific affinity. So this isn't a good example of what would happen during Void. But right now, if Bad El Khazar wasn't getting stunned, he would be doing the right turn order. The other disadvantage too, though, is that when the boss is green, the green boss on Ultra Nightmare is the absolute worst one you can get because it also messes up your counterattacks. And I know I just realized that because I was saying that, oh yeah, she's going to be doing her counterattacks in the right rotation. I just realized this is the one exception to the rule, the green affinity. Green affinity with that slow, she cannot do her counterattacks at just the right time with everybody because the slows, depending on who slows end up on, completely mess up your rotation. And it completely messes up your counterattacks. So again, this is not a very good example for this video because this is where your rotation gets messed up no matter what. But if it wasn't for these slows here and basically the decreased speed from the boss, they would all be going in an ideal order, and that's the only thing that would be getting messed up. But this one here completely messed up. Even on a specific affinity, normally I do at least like 21, 22 million damage. On the green, I can do as low as like 18 or 19 on auto, but I'm just letting this take its course on auto. Now, on Void Affinity, I typically do around 25 to 28 million damage with this composition currently. On green, like I said, this is my lowest. It's going to be the lowest for most people just because it messes up your counterattack rotation, which makes you lose out on tons of attacks you get from the counterattack. Yeah, that was horrible. 16.1 there. That was really, really bad. Really bad. But you only need to get 18.5 million per key, and like I said, normally I get like 27, 28 million on the autos on the other one. So you can see I'm already at 65.38 with 3 keys. So I have my last key here, like I just got it a little while ago. So I'm gonna have no problems going over the 70 million on the boss here. So I'm good already anyway. All right, but as far as the affinity, like I said, green is the absolute worst you can possibly get because it's gonna mess up your counterattacks. So But you at least got to see that rotation in action. Maybe I'll do another example one day on the Void, but if that was on Void, like I said, my rotation would have been going in the right order as far as my counterattacks getting cast at the right time. Bet Alcazar would have been removing the stuns at the right time, and everything would have been going the way that it should go. All right, so that was just a bad example, like I said, because it was a green affinity, but I mean, you at least got a taste of what's going to go wrong in green and affinity now on auto-friendly. So with green, that might be one of those ones where if you struggle to push the 70 million that you need for the highest boss treasure chest, you might need to do some of your fights manually. And I had to do that at one point. There was a lot of times where when the boss went green, if I only got one key in on Void and they went green, there was sometimes I had to manually fight, or maybe near the end of the fight I needed to start doing it manually. Because another issue with this particular composition is with Turvold here, when he gets that increased defense from Martyr for the 2 AoE attacks, normally I want him keeping those 2 increased defenses. On his own, on auto, he'll mess it up where he will do his A2 here, get an extra turn, and do his A3 or the A1 depending on what what's on cooldown. As such, he could actually intentionally cause defense down to fall off of himself because of getting an extra turn from this and then doing another turn and losing it. That can end up causing him to die prematurely. So that's things you got to pay attention to as well when it comes to putting it on auto and seeing who's doing what. So what I can do to fix that though is near the end of the fight, like I'll wait the first 5 minutes or so into the fight, and then after about 5 minutes in, then I will start doing Turvold on manual. And so what'll happen is that when he gets the counterattacks, if I see that he can get an extra turn, but he's going to lose his increased defense in the process, I will intentionally only use his A1 or his A3 here so he doesn't get that extra turn and lose the increased defense. Because again, it will cause him to wipe prematurely near the end of the fight when the damage gets brutal. But again, I don't need to pay attention to that in the beginning. Only about 4 or 5 minutes in. So sometimes that's what you might have to do as well though, if there's certain things that could potentially mess up when the damage starts to get brutal. Another reason too is with Altan, where again, if there's a risk that Altan might lose that attack down there at the end of the fight, that could cause me to wipe prematurely. And Martyr can be a backup normally because like I said, she has an attack down on her A3, but if she's on auto, she's not going to save this in case of an emergency. On manual, I can pay attention to those things so that if Altan does lose the attack down, I've had a couple of really bad luck for a couple of turns, he loses attack down, I can use her A3 to get attack down up on the boss so that I don't wipe and lose all my champions because of some bad RNG just with Altan. So it's always great to have backups like that. So then that way, if somebody does lose a certain buff or debuff like that you need, you have a backup plan so you can keep yourself alive in an emergency. On auto, a lot of times, like I said, they're not going to work the way they should, and she's not going to save that for a backup. Like I said, you saw in that video, every time A3 was up, even if attack down was on the boss, she used it anyway. And I don't know, I wasn't paying enough attention to see if there was any examples of it, but again, if defense down falls off the boss, even if attack down is up on the boss still, she still uses this A3. It's so freaking annoying, but it's the way it works on auto. So the best bet is to do the fights on manual, put the fights on auto, see how your damage is on auto compared to what you can do on manual. So always test it on manual first, and for at least 7 to 8 encounters, because sometimes even on manual you'll have some bad luck as far as like a lot of War Masters missing or poisons getting resisted, things like that. So that could throw off your damage too. So take the average of about 7 to 8 fights on manual, then do about 7 to 8 fights on auto and compare the damage and see what happens. So that's about the best advice that I can give you at this point, guys, because again, I wanted to try to keep this as open-ended as possible. So you saw what would happen with my specific champions. I gave you some examples of, like, say, Nethril, Rosin Scarhide. Rosin and Nethril are not auto-friendly, but I mean, if you really want to do them on auto, can you? Sure. It's just if you're going to do Nethril on auto, you're going to have to change. I don't even have him I have him built for arena, not for the clan boss. But if I had him built for clan boss and I wanted him auto-friendly, I would have War Master on him so that every time he does an attack, 60% chance of inflicting bonus damage. If I was doing him manually, I would have Giant Slayer on him because the only thing that I would ever be using is his A1, which is 3 hits. So that means 30% chances, which is obviously overall going to do a lot more damage than the 1 hit with 60%. So, but again, it depends on whether you're using the manual or auto. So auto friendly, War Master on him. So that's all that I got for now, though, guys. If you do have any questions on anything that I didn't cover in this video, just let me know. But hopefully this covered enough in here to give you an idea of how to build an auto-friendly composition for yourself and determine if you have the right champions yet. And maybe you don't, or maybe you do, but maybe going from auto to manual, you know, gives you an extra 7 or 8 million. That's huge. You know, for me, on the auto, what I find is I usually lose, depending on the affinity. On Void, for example, I usually lose about anywhere from 2 to, at worst case scenario, 2 to 5 million damage. And 5 million damage is like really, really bad luck, where clearly attack down fell off the boss, the group wiped prematurely. I could have saved them by using Martyr's attack down as a backup, but they didn't do it. They died prematurely. I lost about 5 million damage. But I've had some fights that did almost as much damage as I do on auto. I mean, the most that I've ever done on manual, I think, is like 28 point something million. There's been times in encounters where I've done upwards of 28 million on auto. So, actually, no, correction. There was one time on manual that I did 30 million. I don't even know how. It was like 30.1 million. I was like, whoa. But most of the time on manual, my best is like 28, 29 million a few times that I pulled off. But on auto, they'll get really close to that too. And again, as long as you can 4-key the boss on auto, you're good. If you can't do it within 4 keys, you might need to do manual for a while, or you might need to do a hybrid. There was a point in time where what I needed to do was I needed to do the 2 void keys on manual, but after I did 2 void keys on manual, then I could do my next 2 fights on auto, and I didn't need to worry about it. I'd still get enough damage. So you can see here, I did my first 2 keys on void. It was on auto, but I got plenty more than enough damage that I'm going to be way over the minimum that I need to get that 70.1 million or whatever it is for the boss. So I'm good. All right. So again, you just got to look here. Oh, 70.2, sorry. So 70.273 million that you need on the boss. So anyway, but again, I'm going to be well over that by the time that I use my 3rd key here. I'm actually going to have to cut my damage short. One little tip there too, before I go, just touch one other thing. If you have a clan that is having a hard time making sure everybody in the clan gets a chance to get the highest chest, like with our clan, we don't want to go over 80 million. Really, we want to stick between 70 to 75 million, stick as close to that as we possibly can so that everybody in our clan gets a chance to get the top tier chest, other than like there's some people obviously that aren't aiming for the top chest. But for the people who do, I know everybody up to y'all play, he gets the, I want him to get it. So there's 112 million left. At this point, I'm only going to go a little over 70 million. Just so you know, you can actually regulate how much damage you do by leaving the fight early. All right, and I'm not going to show you the example in the video here because I'm pretty much done. But what you can do is you put the fight on auto and keep track of about how much damage you do on average. I do an average of about 2.5 million damage per minute. So the absolute minimum that I ever do is like 2 million. So what I'll do is, like, since I'm at 65 million already, what I'll do is I'll do the fight for like 3.5 minutes, and then I'll leave the fight early. If you leave the fight early, whatever damage you've already done still gets recorded. So if you leave the fight with the clan boss, that's one of the few exceptions where it will actually still record that and save the amount of damage that you did until you left the fight. So you can leave early and regulate how much damage you do if you're trying to look out for other clan members to make sure that they get their damage that they need as well. So just something to think about, because you can see there's quite a few people that still need theirs. I got, looks like 4 different members that still need to get up to the 70.2 whatever million. So that's all I got for now, though, guys. I figured I'd just throw that little tidbit out there as well. But again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything on specific champions, let me know. But again, remember, specific champions, you're going to have to test them yourself, because what might be correct information right now may not be correct information from a month from now if they modify the AI to that specific champion. So you got to remember that. You always got to check either with clan members, currently and say, hey, is Nethril still auto-friendly? Or hey, is, such and such still auto-friendly on the clan boss? And find out currently from clan members or from the forums or whatever if it is still to date, because it could have changed. So just remember that, guys. So that's all that I got for now, though. Hope this was useful. Again, questions, comments, concerns, just let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, hope this helped you out here. I wish you luck on your auto-friendly, rotations and rosters. So that's all I got for now, though, guys. So in the meantime, take care and stay tuned for the next episode.